Good morning. I'm Zinklea Samoa in for Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, 1 week. It has now been 7 days since 19 children and 2 teachers were shot and killed in their classroom in Uvalde, Texas. Now, funeral services are set to begin today for some of the victims.
It's just devastating, to understand what they went through, what they saw, what they heard, It's tough.
As parents bury their children, the investigation into the police response grows deeper. The new information we're learning about those at the center of the response. Holding on to the east, Ukrainians are struggling to keep control of the eastern part of their country as Russian troops advance, taking over town after town. The latest on the ground as Ukraine waits for more shipments of high-tech weapons from the United States. Travel headache. Thousands of flights have been canceled or delayed in the last 24 hours as people try to head home after the Memorial Day weekend. The latest on the chaos at the airports and what this could mean for your travel plans this summer. Plus, a party fit for a queen. The UK is gearing up to honor Queen Elizabeth's 70 years on the throne in the first ever Platinum Jubilee. The final preparations underway and the royals were set to make an appearance at this week's celebrations. 24 hours from now, I'm going to be there in London.
So
vacationing,
fun.
Joining the party.
Enjoy. High tea.
Yes, exactly. We actually are doing tea tomorrow.
Love it. Love it.
When in Rome. All right, we are going to begin this hour with the latest on the deadly shooting at that Texas elementary school.
That's right. Today marks 1 week since the shooting at Robb Elementary School that killed 19 students and 2 teachers. Families are now coming together this week as the first of the funerals for the victims is set for today. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky joins us from Uvalde with the latest. Morgan, good morning.
And Zinklea, Joe, good morning. And those funerals set to start here in just a few hours, the first of 21, as this community tries to grapple with what comes next. The pain of what happened inside Robb Elementary is so great, there are now discussions to tear that school down and build an entirely new one. In the meantime, the man authorities say made the call to wait and not engage the gunman faces an uncertain political future in his own hometown.
Once we do get some information that we can release to them.
This morning, Uvalde's school police chief Pete Arredondo would have been just hours away from being sworn in as a new city council member. But city officials now say that meeting has been canceled. The man investigators say made the call to wait before engaging the gunman, staying silent. NBC News reached out for comment, but no response. The city's mayor maintaining Arredondo is fit for office.
He was elected, and there's nothing I can do to change that. And that's something Pete and I'm sure the people in his district will come to terms with.
The highly criticized police response, the focus of a new Justice Department review. A senior official telling NBC News the DOJ is expected to name the person who will lead that probe within days. Meanwhile, President Biden taking aim at assault weapons.
I know that it makes no sense to be able to purchase something that can fire up to 300 rounds.
During the president's visit to Texas Sunday, State Senator Roland Gutierrez says they discussed the future of Robb Elementary and the possibility of tearing it down and rebuilding a brand new school.
They don't want to go back in. They're traumatized. I have little kids that come here and they're just bawling when they come near the school. We can't let them do that kind of trauma.
Those lost now being remembered in this tight-knit town. The first visitation services taking place Monday as mourners paid their respects to young lives cut short, like 10-year-old Mate Rodriguez. The little girl described as a sweet soul, dreamed of going to college to become a marine biologist. Her name just one of 21 on white crosses, now covered in flowers and notes of love.
It hurts because, like I said, they were helpless in there, like calling out for help, and nobody came.
And in light of this tragedy, there has been discussion on potential gun reform, but it has just been discussion. The president saying he would consider an assault weapons ban. That would be the first of its kind since 2004, would no doubt face a very uphill battle. In the meantime, we know senators from both sides are meeting today to discuss a potential framework for changes in gun policy. But for the folks who live here in Uvalde, they say enough talk. Now is the time for action. Guys.
A lot of grief and a lot of desire for action and change. Morgan, thank you.
This morning, we're hearing from one of the first responders of the shooting. Border Patrol agent Jacob Alvarado has been credited with saving countless lives. He spoke exclusively on Today earlier this morning. Here's a portion of that conversation.
They're suffering. Yeah, they're trying their best to get through, but it's hard. Everyone knows everyone there.
We were just talking about your wife. She was a fourth grade teacher there. She's going to 2 funerals today.
I don't know if it's necessary today. It's either today or tomorrow. But yeah, she's dealing with that right now. She couldn't make it.
There's so much loss here. Let's go back to that day. You were off duty.
Yes.
And
I was getting ready to have my surgery. I was supposed to have my surgery Tuesday. It didn't happen. Thankfully, it didn't happen. I was able to be in town.
And you just decided to get your hair cut in the morning.
Well, I was at the award ceremony.
Yeah.
I was there earlier that morning.
At the school?
At the school.
Yeah.
So I stayed around town, had breakfast with my mom, washed my car, got my car clean, and fixing to go get my hair cut.
And tell me about the text you received.
My barber actually heard shots, or he thought he heard shots. He was coming through the parking lot, and he asked me if I heard it. I told him, so I didn't hear anything. I went inside the barbershop, sat down, and then I can't recall if he received the text first or if I received it, that there's an active shooter. There's an active shooter. Help. I love you, for my wife.
And what did you do next?
I looked for a gun. My barber said he had a gun. Both of us raced over to the school and met up there.
From your texts, it looks like you got there at 11:48.
Yeah, like I said, times, I have no idea on time. I just know I got there as fast as I could.
What did you see and hear when you arrived?
Just chaos. Chaos. Everyone was trying to get to the school. People were trying to get everything situated. I was just trying to get towards my wife's room and my daughter's room.
Were there already police there?
There were some there already, yes.
And what happened? Did you just run in and start evacuating kids, or how did that unfold?
I was actually going over there, and then I went back to my barber's truck. He got me his shotgun. He gave me some shells. I put whatever shells I had in my pocket, and then I took off running towards the school.
Did you ask the police that were there, hey, can I go in? Did you check in with them? I mean, how did that happen?
It's a small community.
Yeah.
My wife works at Rob. Everyone at Rob knows me. Pretty much all local law enforcement knows me, or I know the majority of them. So I was able to go in, and I announced who I was and made my way through.
And what happened next?
As I was going in, I could just see kids coming out of the windows and kids coming my way. So I was just helping all the kids out. I was trying to contact my wife, see where my wife was at. I can't recall if I was calling her or texting her, but then I met up with one of the officers there, trying to see what was going on. I tried to make my way towards the door. I wasn't, like I said, I didn't have any of my gear. I was off duty. So I didn't go in. I met with another officer there, Ruben, which I went to school with, and his wife is one of the one that got shot by the shooter.
Mrs. Morales.
Yes, correct.
He was there looking for his wife as well.
Yes.
And you were there helping kids get out, but you were looking for your second grader as well.
Yes. My wife finally texted me or called me, told me she was across the street at the funeral home. After that, my next thing was to go get my daughter.
Your wife had made it out safely, but your daughter was still there.
Exactly. I didn't know where the shooter was at. I knew he had shot in the building. I didn't know if he was still there or not.
Did you hear any gunshots while you were in that vicinity?
At that time, no.
And how were the kids getting out? You know, I mean, I think people are trying to understand how this unfolded. It's chaos that is easy to understand. But where were the police? Where was the classroom?
The police were breaking out the windows on the outside, and the kids were jumping out through the window. They were jumping out through the window, in the parking lot, down the pavement, headed towards the funeral home.
Did you ever see those officers that were poised outside the door? You know, obviously there's a lot of scrutiny now of those actions and whether they should have gotten in. Did you ever have any occasion to interact with them at all?
At one point I was there at the door, fixing to go in, but once again I didn't have any of my gear. It wouldn't have been a smart move for me. All those guys had their gear and stuff. So, like I said, I pulled back. My wife had texted me, called me that she was okay at the funeral home. All the kids were already out of that building, so I went on to find my daughter in her wing.
What was that moment like when you saw your daughter?
When I saw my daughter, it was a big relief. Yeah.
I can only imagine. That was Border Patrol Agent Jacob Alvarado appearing this morning on Today. The investigation into the school police officer's response is ongoing. The Justice Department is now looking into what happened.
Now to the latest on the conflict in Ukraine and Europe's new round of sanctions against Russia. The European Union has agreed to ban nearly 90% of all Russian oil imports by the end of the year. The organization is looking to keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin as Russian forces advance on a key city in Ukraine's eastern region. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel brings us the latest from the front lines of the war.
In a late move overnight, the European Union voted to dramatically reduce oil imports from Russia, banning them by sea. It could cut the amount of oil flowing from Russia to Europe by 2/3 by the end of the year, and maybe the hardest economic sanction against Russia since this war began. And it comes as Russian forces are making gains on the battlefield here in Ukraine.
For the first time in the war, Russia seems to be winning, at least out in the east. Here, Russia's slow, brutal artillery and rocket assaults are clawing away land from Ukraine. Russian troops now threaten to encircle Ukraine's eastern agricultural and coal mining heartland known as the Donbass. The village of Siversk sits in Russia's crosshairs. It is frequently hit by Russian artillery, and the fire is getting closer. The village has been without running water and power for weeks, and half of its residents have left. The mayor does what he can to distribute food. They're trying to squeeze us out, but I'm confident our soldiers will keep us safe, he says. Twice a week, there's enough fuel to run a generator for 2 hours so people can charge phones. Not that there's any cell service or Wi-Fi. Volunteers hand out canvas to cover broken windows. Fresh water is in short supply. Across town, the village hospital is now a shelter. All 39 people living here had their homes destroyed.
When I'm down here, I can't help but think, what did these people do? These are elderly people, weren't bothering anybody, and now they're under attack and they have to live like this in the darkness under the hospital. A hospital which can't provide them medical care, can only provide a little bit of shelter. For what? For what?
But help may be coming. Ukrainian troops are rushing toward the village, reinforcing the entire region. And more weapons supplied by the United States have already started to arrive on the front lines.
The Biden administration is sending Ukraine advanced artillery that can outshoot Russian guns, but not long-range weapons that can fire deep into Russian territory. Sinclair, Joe, back to you.
Richard Engel, important reporting. Thank you so much.
Let's get more on the situation in Ukraine with Angela Stent. She's a senior advisor to the Center for Eurasian, Russian, and East European Studies at Georgetown University and a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Angela, thanks for joining us. Let's start with what we just heard from Richard there about that intense fighting in the Donbass region of Ukraine. Help us understand, how important is it for the Ukrainians to hold the city, hold that region, or at least try and slow down Russia's advance?
Well, it's very important for the Ukrainians because the Russians are determined now to take the entire Donbass region and then move even on from there. So for the Ukrainians, they really are trying to push the Russians back because they know that if the Russians continue this advance, they could really be cut off from the Black Sea, which they already have been, but the Russians will dig in there. So for the Ukrainians, this really is a key issue here, is to try and stop this Russian advance and to push it back.
On top of what's happening in the east, there's a new report from NBC News that gets into the destruction that Russia is inflicting on Ukraine's cultural sites. Ukrainians have stated how one of Russia's intentions in this war is to stamp out their identity and their way of life. What goes through your mind when you read this report? Can more be done to try and protect Ukrainian culture?
Well, what goes through my mind is this is really cultural genocide. The Russians are trying to say that the Ukrainians don't have their national identity. They've destroyed, for instance, a museum and library to one of Ukraine's most famous poets and philosophers. They're destroying churches. They're destroying other cultural artifacts. I don't know how much can be done to stop this. because the Ukrainians are so focused on fighting the Russians militarily that there's a limit to what they can do. But this really goes against all kind of conventions, all understandings of what should happen during a war. And it's really terrible for the Ukrainians that they have to endure this.
And so much of that can never be replaced. I want to ask you about these sanctions that are making headlines right now from the EU. How significant do you think these sanctions are? And why was the European Union unable to do a full ban on Russian oil?
Well, they weren't able to do that because Hungary, for instance, is a landlocked country and it gets its gas by pipeline from Russia, and it doesn't have that many alternatives. Other countries can get tanker oil that is delivered by sea. And so Hungary was the holdout here. And so they made a compromise, which is that Hungary can continue to receive its oil by pipeline, but they will cut back by 75 or even 90% of oil imports from Russia by the end of the year. You have to know that $23 billion goes to Russia every month from the European Union for these oil imports. So this will be significant. Russia will still be able to sell oil elsewhere, but the fact that the EU has done this, I think, is a very important signal.
Angela Stent, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
As many Americans head back to work today, some may still be recovering from a rough travel weekend as delays and cancellations piled up at airports nationwide. And with gas prices at record highs, there's new concern about what this all might mean for vacationers at the start of this summer travel season. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello joined us now from Reagan National Airport. Tom, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Listen, it was a rough weekend for tens of thousands of people trying to fly over the weekend. We had delays, we had cancellations, and oh, by the way, that's just the airports. If you're out on the road, you're paying record amounts for gas at the pump. And oh, by the way, guess what? The summer season is just getting started.
The kickoff to the summer travel season started with a whole lot of meltdowns over the holiday weekend.
We just want to get home, you know?
More than 1,000 domestic flights canceled across Saturday and Sunday, more than 400 Memorial Day. Delta, the most affected this weekend, canceling more than 500 flights. American Airlines also impacted with more than 120 cancellations Monday alone.
Airlines, even though they pared back their schedules, they still found themselves with not enough pilots, not enough flight attendants, and more flights than they could operate.
Grant and Hallie Holmes are newlyweds just returning from their honeymoon in Barbados. But they spent more than 30 hours stuck in Miami International, facing long lines like this, trying to get on a connecting flight home to Kansas City, but that was delayed multiple times before being canceled.
It's chaos, and I hope people have a better time than we are having, but you know, some of it's just out of our control.
Some airlines are slashing their schedules during the peak summer months, hoping to avoid disruptions like these. But that could mean vacationers have fewer and pricier options.
I'm really worried that the problems we are seeing in the U.S. and abroad are going to cause some people who are thinking about flying for their summer vacations to say, you know what, we'll take a road trip instead.
But the cost of gas is also taking a historic toll on Americans' wallets.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's way too expensive.
The national average for a gallon of regular now a whopping $4.62. Even higher in some places like California, $6.17. And overall, more than $1.57 higher than last year. The steep price of fuel impacting summer recreation of all kinds, whether on the road or on the water.
We're going to stay much closer to shore now because of the fact that we're not going on any long-distance trips.
All right, back here at the airport, and you may be wondering, what is the deal with the airlines? Why is it they still are struggling a year after that terrible summer following the pandemic when they had meltdowns nationwide? Well, a part of the problem is staffing issues, again, because of COVID. When people test positive for COVID, they have to call out sick. Doesn't matter if it's a ground crew, flight attendant, pilot, etc. Now, Delta Airlines also blaming air traffic control staffing issues. We checked with the FAA. They say they really have no national ATC staffing issues. But oh, by the way, Delta is one of the airlines that is now trimming its schedule this summer because they're trying to make sure that they have enough seats and pilots for all of the passengers who are back in the skies. Guys, back to you.
Tom Costello in Reagan Airport. Thank you.
Time to get a check on your morning news now. Weather?
With Michelle Grossman. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And we're going to start in the tropics. We're going to switch it up a bit here because we have something really interesting happening. So Agatha, if you didn't hear, made landfall yesterday around 4 o'clock Central Daylight Time. And as it moved on shore, it's starting to weaken. So we're seeing a tropical depression now. It's going over really mountainous areas in Mexico. But what's interesting is what might happen as it emerges back into the southern Gulf. It could reemerge, the remnants, at least, of Agatha, reemerge, kind of fuel a depression, a tropical storm, so to speak, and we could see our next names or first name storm in the Atlantic. So this is the first name storm in the Pacific. That would be Agatha. If it went into the Gulf, it fueled this storm. We could see Alex. That would be first on the list. So we're going to watch this very closely. Then it's going to move off to the north and east and affect parts of Florida. So this is the scenario here. A new tropical system could develop by late week, 60% chance in the next 5 days. What needs to happen, though, it needs to actually emerge into the Gulf. That would be later on tomorrow, and then the models pick up on it, and we could see what would happen with it. But this would be the development area right in the southern Gulf. And then as we go throughout time here, it would be Alex, and it would affect parts of southern Florida by Friday and also Saturday. So that rarely happens. It has happened in the past maybe 3 times in recorded history, making that leap from the Pacific to the Atlantic. Usually it goes from the Atlantic to the Pacific, although that's rare too, but just really interesting. Otherwise, we're really busy across the country here. We have record highs, temperatures in the 80s and 90s from the Great Lakes all the way to the northeast. We have severe storms. We have a long cold front that's sparking some storms into that warm air. Back behind it, we have mountain snow. We are measuring feet of snow in the northern Rockies. And then once again, we are hot and dry in the southwest and parts of California. So we do have fire danger once again. So more spring storms today. We are looking at a slow moving front crossing the plains. That is bringing the chance for severe weather from the Texas Panhandle all the way to Wisconsin. We could see damaging winds, really gusty winds up to 70 miles per hour, some hail, and also the chance of a few tornadoes, even some flooding rains as well. And then tomorrow, guys, we're going to watch this as it moves off to the east, affecting parts of the northeast.
I'll have to keep an eye on there. All right.
Yeah. Michelle Grossman, thank you.
Sure.
And coming up on Morning News Now, Queen Elizabeth is gearing up to celebrate a milestone no other monarch has managed to reach, 70 years on the throne.
We're going to take you to London next, where the final preparations are underway for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, plus the royal reunions we could see this week.
Now to our international headlines. Taiwan's defense ministry says that Chinese aircrafts entered their air defense zone.
NBC's Raf Sanchez joins us now from Tel Aviv with that and more world news. Raf, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Good morning, Zinkley. Taiwan says it scrambled fighter jets after China sent more than 30 warplanes into its airspace. The Chinese incursion is the largest since January and comes just days after President Biden warned Beijing against aggression in Taiwan. China has been making these incursions with increasing frequency in recent months. In Brazil, at least 91 people have been killed in massive flooding and landslides. Authorities say another 26 are still missing, but the toll may rise higher still. Around 4,000 people have lost their homes, and states of emergency have been declared across the country. And finally, Egypt has discovered a vast trove of mummies and artifacts at the Saqqara necropolis outside Cairo. At least 250 sarcophagi were found, many of them containing well-preserved bodies. And guys, I've actually been to that dig site. It's amazing. Those sarcophagi were buried in some cases more than 500 years ago, but the paint on them is so vivid, it looks like they could have been painted last week.
That's so cool. I love that.
Very cool. Raf, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
And coming up, jurors are back deliberating today in the defamation case between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
The possible outcomes for this high-profile trial and when the jury could reach a verdict next.
Welcome back. Thursday marks the ultimate flex for Queen Elizabeth, her Platinum Jubilee, honoring her unprecedented 70 years on the throne.
I bet she's calling it her ultimate flex, too.
You think?
Yeah, all right. The big events kick off on Thursday. Millions are planning on attending, including Prince Harry, Meghan, and their children coming all the way from California. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons is there, joins us from Buckingham Palace with more on the significance of this historic moment. Hey, Keir, good morning.
Hey Joe, hey Zinkley, how about this? We're braving the British weather to put you at the heart of the parade, the pageantry and the party. Artists like Lin-Manuel Miranda and Elton John will play on a concert stage. Take a look at that, right outside Buckingham Palace. How about this for a mind-blowing fact? The Queen became Queen before Elvis and the Beatles. This morning, final touches and anticipation. London decked out in red, white and blue ahead of the historic celebration. Marking the Queen's 70 years on the throne, a milestone no British monarch has ever reached until now. These streets will be full of people.
Yeah. Everyone will be coming out to celebrate, so it should be fantastic.
A 4-day-long display of pageantry awaits. On Thursday, pomp and ceremony, called Trooping the Colour, a traditional display dating back over 260 years to mark the monarch's official birthday. Then a crowning moment, the family balcony appearance. This time, Andrew, Harry and Meghan will not be there for the spectacular flypast. And in the evening, more than 2,000 beacons will light up the skies to mark 70 years of the Queen's reign. On Friday, a service of thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral will gather the whole royal family together. Saturday will bring the Queen's favourite moment, the Derby. We got an early preview at Epsom Downs, home to the most famous horse race in the world. OK, wow, the winner's enclosure.
Yeah.
And the Queen will be...
in the royal box.
Right there?
Yeah.
Oh, she gets the best view.
She gets a good view.
She gets a good view.
And she's been a loyal supporter of the Derby for so many years. She's only missed 4 since her coronation in 1953.
The Queen and her family clearly enjoyed their day at the races.
A party outside the palace will follow in the evening, with a concert including the legendary Diana Ross, who tweeted, "I am honoured to perform for Her Majesty the Queen once again." On Sunday, street parties, more than 200,000 events around the UK, over 12 million gathering to celebrate the Queen.
We've seen a phenomenal level of interest in the big Jubilee lunch celebrations this year.
And to end it all, a parade of more than 10,000 people performing during the Jubilee's pageant extravaganza.
People come from across the country, so many people come together for that momentous moment in central London. I think it's going to be a really fitting end to the weekend.
The Queen has marked 3 Jubilees before, silver in '77, to gold in 2002 and diamond nearly 10 years ago in 2012. But this will be the Queen's first without her husband, Prince Philip. She's also facing mobility issues that could prevent and limit her attendance at some events. The royal family coming together to support the Queen, despite some strained ties. And they are expecting, guys, 1 million people on the streets of London. Take a look. These folks are already camping out. They've been here since yesterday. You don't have to be eccentric to be British, but it helps.
No kidding here. I'm going to be there in about 24 hours, and it looks like I'm bringing better weather, so I think there'll be a little less rain.
Definitely have an umbrella, hopefully a hat.
I saved a space for you. I saved a little space for you right here, Joe.
Thank you, Kier. Yeah, those are my friends. I sent them in advance, and so there we go. Kier, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, jurors in the defamation lawsuit against Amber Heard are resuming deliberations today after breaking for the Memorial Day holiday weekend.
That's right. Heard is being sued for $50 million by her ex-husband, Johnny Depp, accusing her of publishing a Washington Post op-ed claiming she was a victim of domestic abuse. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer joins us now from outside the courthouse in Fairfax, Virginia, with the latest. Miguel, good morning. What's the scene right now?
Well, guys, it's a much different scene than we saw over the last 6 weeks. Behind me, we have not seen a large crowd gather today as they had over the last 6 weeks during this defamation trial. It's fairly quiet here today. That's because the jury is in deliberations. It's technically their second day of deliberations, though it's their first full day. They got this case late Friday afternoon, deliberated for about 2.5 hours. They'll resume those deliberations here in about 30 minutes. We have obviously no idea how long it'll take them to reach a verdict in this case, which carried on for 6 weeks, guys.
So, yeah, Miguel, the jury only deliberated for 2 hours on Friday before the holiday weekend. We know there's a lot of information they have to work through. There's the suit against Heard, the countersuit against Depp, and they have to reach unanimous decision. So walk us through again, what's at issue here and what is it they have to decide?
Well, that's right, Joe. This was a 6-week trial. There was over 100 hours of testimony. Johnny Depp took the stand for 5 days. Amber Heard took the stand for 5 days. There was dozens of witnesses, including fellow celebrities. Kate Moss was on the stand late last week. The jury has to basically decide if either Johnny Depp or Amber Heard was defamed. Once they reach that decision, they have to then award damages. Now, they could go several different ways. They could find one party guilty. They could find neither party guilty. They could offer some money to one or money to none. So they basically have to walk through every single step. So those deliberations are clearly going to take several hours. And as you mentioned, 2.5 hours in the books already done, Joe.
And Miguel, we've seen a lot of this trial play out on social media, right? Some discourse highlighting how the trial is triggering for domestic abuse survivors. Others are vocal proponents for celebrity Johnny Depp. But hashtags and memes and online conversation might not be an accurate indication of what the jury will ultimately decide. What's your reporting telling you?
Yeah, so essentially we have no idea what the jury is thinking at this time. They've only been together for a few hours in that jury deliberation room. But as you mentioned, there's been literally billions of views on this story. It's gone viral, obviously, on social media. Many people, the vast majority of posts have been pro-Johnny Depp, supporting his case. There's been a lot less views on Amber Heard's side and the pro-Amber Heard side. We really don't know the impact of social media on the jury. The jury's not supposed to take out any outside information into that jury deliberation room, so we have no idea what they're thinking. Of course, they sat through this 6-week trial, listened to those dozens of witnesses. We'll find out what their verdict is, hopefully, in the next day or two.
All right, Miguel Almaguer, thank you so much. Coming up, making history on stage.
That's right. The Tony and Grammy Award-winning musical, Dear Evan Hansen, now has an Asian-American actor playing the lead role for the first time. That actor, Zachary Noah Pizer, joins us next with what he hopes people will take away from his performance.
Plus, asking for help. At least 5 college athletes have died by suicide since March. The changes their parents now want to see to help students dealing with the pressures of college life. Next. We're back with some financial headlines. Oil prices are rising even higher after a new ban on oil imports from Russia.
That's right. CNBC's Bertha Coombs joins us now with this and more financial news. Good morning, Bertha.
Hey, good morning, guys. That's right. We're watching U.S. crude up about 3% this morning, trading well above $118 a barrel. The gains coming as European leaders have reached a deal to ban most Russian oil imports by the end of the year. They'll halt imports delivered by ship, which account for about 90% of the oil they get from Russia. But Hungary managed to get a carve-out included in the agreement, allowing for Russian oil to continue flowing through pipelines. Cruise lines, meantime, are running into the same problems plaguing the airline industry, staffing shortages. Recent report by Business Insider says cruise operators are having trouble keeping up with new hires. As a result, they've been forced to limit capacity on ships and cancel some sailings altogether. Carnival has temporarily closed 2 restaurants on every ship to help offset those staffing issues. Carnival, Norwegian, and Holland America all point to high demand for work on ships. Governments are now overwhelmed trying to process applications for work visas, slowing down the ability to fully staff each voyage. And Apple's annual developer conference gets underway next week, and we're getting some details about what to expect. According to Bloomberg, Apple will likely share info on iOS 16, including an always-on display feature that will initially be just for the upcoming iPhone 14 Pro models. It'll allow you to see notifications and other alerts without having to fully wake up the screen. The feature has long been available on many Android phones. And I know Android folks are always saying, you know, Apple just copies Android every time.
I'm just impressed that
it's one of those things that seems to happen.
iPhone 14.
Yeah, no kidding.
So many.
I won't even tell you what one I have right now on my personal phone.
Thank you so much.
Oh, boy.
The Broadway smash hit Dear Evan Hansen has raked in all kinds of awards, 6 Tonys, a Grammy, and the Olivier Award for Best Musical. And after 6 years on Broadway, it's now celebrating a first. Zachary Noah Pizer is the first Asian-American performer to play the lead role of Evan Hansen. The musical brings mental health front and center through the lens of a bullied teen who's trying to cope with social anxiety. Joining us now is Zachary Noah Pizer and Dr. Harold Koplowitz. He is the president of the Child Mind Dateline Institute. Good to have both of you with us. Zachary, I want to start with you. And just first of all, what does it mean for you to be the first Asian American performer to play the lead in such a beloved, well-respected musical like Dear Evan Hansen?
It means everything to me. Especially in the recent wave of anti-Asian hate and the sentiment in our country. I think right now it can feel a lot like being Asian simply puts a target on your back. So being able to represent in this way, to be able to tell this story on the Broadway stage at the Music Box Theater every single night really means everything to me, to be able to give that voice to our community.
It's so important. In addition to it being right now Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, API Month, May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. That's a big theme in Dear Evan Hansen because it deals with some heavy issues. And that's why we're chatting with Dr. Koplowitz, who's here with us. Talk to us about your relationship with this story, how you and your organization became involved.
Well, the Childmind Institute is the only independent nonprofit in the United States that's exclusively dedicated to transforming the lives of kids who have a mental health or learning disorder. And mental health disorders are the most common disorders of childhood and adolescence. So while the show was in its creation, Stacy Mindich, the executive producer, asked me and several others from the Childmind Institute to start watching the show, look at the script, to make sure that it was authentic, that the symptoms of social anxiety were well represented, and that it was a true example of what so many teenagers go through. And I think considering what we hear about these mass shootings, we should remember that while mental health disorders are common and real and treatable, people who have them are very unlikely to hurt others. They're more likely to hurt themselves, but they're very rarely violent toward others.
So important to talk about this and to talk about it in a smart, responsible way. Zachary, you have a history with this musical. You were an original cast member in Dear Evan Hansen's international premiere, which was in Toronto. This is a tough character to play. You go through a whole spectrum of emotions throughout it. It is, if you haven't seen it, bring Kleenex. What is it about this character and this story that speaks to you?
Well, this show is so special for so many reasons. The music is spectacular. The story is incredible. The relationships, the characters, they're all relatable in some way. I know I definitely relate to Evan. I mean, middle school Zach had a really tough time belonging, figuring out where he belonged in kind of the system. But this show, the reason why it is so special and singular is because it creates space to talk about mental health. And that was one of the main reasons why it spoke so much to me. Being able to talk about mental health at any age, but especially when you're young, can be so difficult because it's uncomfortable to talk about our feelings, or simply because you just don't have the vocabulary to. And this show is so special because it creates that space to start that conversation.
And Zach, you have to pour your heart and soul into every performance, which I know can't be easy. What's that like for you?
It is challenging, and I am definitely more tired than I've ever been doing another show. But at the same time, I am so fulfilled. It is so rewarding being able to be on that stage and tell this story.
Dr. Koplowitz, quickly on this last one, for young people who are struggling with their mental health, what's the main thing you want them to take away from this story?
We really want people kids to know they're not alone. And the first thing they should do is raise their hand and ask for help. Talk to a friend, talk to your parent, talk to a teacher. You can't get help without asking for it. And help works. These are the most treatable disorders in all of medicine. 80% of kids get better if they get the right treatment. So please, don't be silent. Ask for help.
Important message. Thank you both for joining us. Zachary Noah Pizer and Dr. Harold Koplowitz. Thank you both. Take care.
And today marks the last day of May and Mental Health Awareness Month. And we want to highlight the struggles of student athletes on college campuses. At least 5 NCAA athletes have died by suicide since March. This morning, for the first time, the parents of 4 of those athletes are sharing an important message about asking for help. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk spoke to the families about their loss.
It's a powerful moment for all of us to be together.
These are the parents of Katie Meyer, Arlena Miller, Morgan Rogers, and Tyler Holinsky, all 4 star athletes and star students. Katie was Stanford's championship-winning goalkeeper and team captain.
Katie was radiant, brilliant.
She was the life of the party.
Arlena stood front and center on the cheerleading team at Southern University in Louisiana.
She was very talented. Whatever she wanted to do, she could have done.
Morgan achieved her dream to play lacrosse for Duke.
Morgan was such a rock star, and I mean a charismatic, win the room over type of personality.
Rush of 4. Helinski has time.
Tyler made history when he threw a game-winning touchdown for Washington State University. Students carried him off the field.
Tyler was awesome. You would have really liked him. He was just one of those likable guys.
4 college students who had everything going for them until it felt too hard to go on. Katie and Arlena died by suicide this year. Tyler took his own life in 2018. A year later, Morgan did too. Their parents sat down with us to talk about a pain that doesn't go away and to share their common message.
Why is it so important to be here?
The easy thing to do would be to stay home and cry all day. That's the easy way. We have to step up and try to help in any way we can.
If this can happen to Tyler, it can happen to anybody. Our family, we were so close and we loved each other and we talked every day, right? We did all this stuff.
It's scary for other families to even go there, to think, wow, this could happen to my kid. Especially there's no red flags. And we had 0 red flags.
Morgan was on her own agenda. She knew we loved her. She had an incredibly supportive family. I mean, I think it's one of our very common denominators in this room.
If love could have saved them all, they'd all be here because we all love them more than life itself. We would have given our lives for our kids.
Suicide is the second leading cause of death for college students. A recent NCAA survey found the rates of mental exhaustion, anxiety, and depression in student athletes is nearly 2 times higher than before the pandemic.
Athletes really are under so much pressure, and they grind every single day. They're up at 6 a.m., they're going to practice. They follow that with classes.
That kind of pressure on campus and online.
I think social media has a lot to do with that. I think that perfectionism is part of what all of our children, possess.
What is it about social media that makes that pressure just ramp up now as compared to years past?
They're judged so much, right? There's a lot of negative comments.
Our kids told us not to read them, yet they were absolutely, kind of keeping score.
Arthur Miller acknowledging sometimes parents can add to the pressure too.
A lot of times we push our children and we try to live our lives through them.
Research shows those who strive for perfection are more reluctant to seek help. Morgan Rogers went to counseling, but she never told anyone how she was really feeling.
The elephant in the room, this is mental illness. Mental illness is a chemical problem inside of Morgan's brain.
Their brain just betrayed them, and they chose a permanent solution to what really is a temporary problem in a 21-year-old's life.
You have to reach the kids and let them know it's not just how you were brought up.
So when you're talking to someone that you think might need some help, you're not supposed to say, are you thinking about hurting yourself? You are supposed to come out directly and say, are you thinking about killing yourself? Because if you ask, are you hurting yourself? Their brain has told them, no, as a matter of fact, I can't wait to stop the pain. So they'll say no.
Parents out there are going to watch this and they're going to be like, what can I learn from what these poor people are going through?
I have an answer for that.
Yeah.
So I loved having dinner at the table. It was just my thing. And we talked about every topic that there is. So at an early age, we discussed sex. We discussed drugs. There was nothing that we left off the table except, looking back, mental health.
Gina and Steve Myers say Katie was facing a disciplinary issue they didn't know anything about. They are now pushing for more conversation between parents and universities.
When your kids go away to college, you are in the dark. You do not get any information regarding your children. They have to tell you. And again, our kids all being very strong and they want to adult, right?
If we had received just baseline information, that we would have stepped in and perhaps this would have been prevented.
Had we known anything.
Had we known a thing.
I don't know.
Open conversation, something these parents all agree will help.
I don't think anybody sitting here would wish what we're going through on another human being.
We're all in this crappy club, that nobody asked to join.
I think there's a greater purpose. We have to make something good come out of this. Something good has to come out of this tragedy. So if we're going to be the ones to step up, we're going to be the ones to make some changes. That's how I feel.
And we won't.
Yeah, right.
It's done.
Right.
It just.
Yeah. A really powerful report from our Stephanie Gosk. Thank you. And if you or anyone you know is struggling, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or text TALK to 741-741.
Such an important story there. Up next, after 2 years of COVID, it does appear more people are returning to movie theaters.
Top Gun Maverick broke records at the box office this weekend, giving Tom Cruise his best ever debut. What's behind the film's success? Next. Welcome back. Makeup and cookie lovers everywhere are in for a treat. Girl Scouts partnered with the cosmetic brand Hip Dot to release a limited edition, get this, Girl Scout cookie-inspired makeup line. From a thin mint-scented eyeshadow palette to lemon and coconut caramel-flavored lipsticks, this collection is inspired by all of the classic Girl Scout cookies. Hip Dot CEO Jeff Sellinger stated he hopes the collection inspires the same courage, confidence, and character that Girl Scouts are known for, and maybe the nostalgic scents and colors can fill your favorite Girl Scout cookie cravings, even when they aren't in season. Joe, my hope is that the next edition will be edible, because that would be great.
I was literally thinking, but if you can't eat it, then I don't know. I'd be like
then
tempted
what's the point? Like the glow up, but you need a little, cookie craving. So.
All right. Thank you, Zen Clay. Appreciate it. It is official. Top Gun Maverick soared to the biggest Memorial Day opening weekend in history. 156 million in domestic tickets and counting. The smash hit is sending a message that the traditional movie theater experience may be poised for a comeback. NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff has more.
Hey there, at nearly 60 years old, Tom Cruise has just blasted his way to a new high, vindicating his determination to hold Top Gun Maverick until it could open big in theaters. The question now, will the millions who turned out to see it get back in the movie-going habit?
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Soaring above expectations, Top Gun Maverick blew away the competition over the weekend, becoming the top-grossing Memorial Day picture in history.
This is probably the most important Memorial weekend in the history of the box office, given the past 2 years and how the pandemic really sidelined movie theaters in a very profound way.
Fueled by a full-throttle marketing campaign and a production designed for the ultimate big screen experience.
Like we're in the cockpit, in the mix, everything moving around us with the top, sound, everything, like we're there.
Maverick also getting strong word of mouth, building momentum all weekend long.
Tom Cruise there ain't nobody like him. That's why we're here.
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell.
Tom Cruise, he knows his star power was built on that 50-foot screen in the multiplex, and he's paying that back every single day when he's hanging out on the side of an airplane.
But will Maverick be a singular phenomenon or the start of a blockbuster summer? Theater owners and film lovers believe the lineup of films about to open should keep turnstiles turning.
You have a new Jurassic Park movie, you have a new Thor movie, you have Elvis, you have Nope, you have a Minions film, you have a new Pixar film, Lightyear. So I don't think this is going to be a one-off, kind of like Spider-Man was in the holiday season last year.
Forget the book. Trust your instincts.
Cruise forcing Paramount to hold Maverick for 2 years, insisting on a theatrical release so fans could enjoy every aspect of the traditional movie experience. A high-stakes gamble now paying off.
Just the popcorn smell and them just relaxing, watching a movie with top-notch sound and a big screen in front of you. You can't beat that.
Top Gun Maverick helping to fuel a rebound this year, but according to the director in a new interview, it almost did not happen. He says Cruise did not want to do the movie, but after an in-person pitch in Paris from the producers, the director said Cruise picked up the phone, he called the studio's chief, and he said simply, "We're making another Top Gun." Back to you.
And he did. All right, Jacob, thank you so much for that report. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.